So if you're an adult going into your autism assessment and you've finally gotten off that wait list that you've been on for years or months, I have some tips for you. And this is coming from my experience being as a late diagnosed ADHDer. Tip number 1, be very prepared. And what I mean by prepared, I mean like have a written log of everything and every experience and example you could think of before your assessment that fits under the diagnostic criteria for autism. Before my assessment, I had a few months to really think about and to prepare for my autism assessment. And during that time, of course, I did a lot of research, but I also filled out a whole Excel sheet where I had the diagnostic criteria, the DSM-5 categories for fitting into autism. And for each category, I wrote down any example I could think of that fit under that category. Because I had a few months in between before my assessment, I had a lot of examples. And funny enough, the more time I had, the more I remembered and the more things I could put into each category and chart to fit under the diagnostic criteria. The second tip I would recommend that you keep in mind is that all the online quizzes that you take, like RADS-R, the autism quiz, as well as any other quiz that you might take that's like on embraceautism.com, which is where I took all the quizzes beforehand. Print those out, save those scores, and have those ready and prepare for you on the day of your assessment. On the day of, I not only brought my printout of the diagnostic criteria that I had all my examples that fit under those categories, but I also brought all the results for the quizzes that said that I meet the being autistic. The psychologist, thankfully, she was very open and very kind, but she just right away was like, "Oh wow, you are very prepared and you've done a lot of research, haven't you?" And I was like, Yes, I have. The third tip I would recommend is to also be prepared during the assessment for the types of tests that they're going to be doing, which are mostly going to be testing that are based off of children. So again, my psychologist who diagnosed me, she was very communicative about what was going on. And she said right off the bat, in order to meet the autism and to get an official diagnosis, you have to admit some kind of deficit. These tests that we're going to be going through, they are mostly meant for children. So the things that we're going to be doing are going to seem kind of weird and seem awkward because you're an adult and they're kind of meant for children, but go with it and do your best. And that's something you want to keep in mind, because there's definitely elements that I saw where it's meant for children and that there is no specific way to test for an adult because it's not meant for an adult. Another tip I would recommend is making sure you have loved ones, those who have known you for a very long time, as well as either partners or friends that you're very close to now that you can call to when it comes to the part of the assessment where they're going to need other people sharing other examples of you demonstrating autistic traits. So for me, this had to call from my parents, had to call my dad into the picture. This had to call a friend of mine who I've known since I was 3. Also my husband, who is very immediate in my life, to draw from examples. And they also had to fill out specific paperwork and information to see whether I meet any of the autism diagnostic criteria. So this is something that might be really challenging for a lot of us, because if we don't have anybody really close to us, or we don't have those that we're sharing this experience with and going through this journey of being diagnosed, it might be a part of the diagnosing criteria that could stop us from getting that final result and actual diagnosis. Lastly, be prepared that you might not get diagnosed with autism. So I bring up this tip not to discourage anybody who has self-diagnosed as autistic and has done all their research and everything and has brought up the examples and their own research to indicate and fit to the diagnostic criteria for self-diagnosing themselves as autistic. But I knew from reading and being a part of other online autistic communities and other women and people who were going through the assessments and hearing their experiences of going through it and not being diagnosed autistic and having that be a reality for many. So I was prepared for that and prepared to potentially just be diagnosed with BPD or OCD or something else. But I had prepared statements as to why I don't fit other criteria for the potential diagnoses that could have been given to me. And that is something that's really important, is that along with your research for understanding whether you are autistic or not, you should definitely research the other diagnoses that women and POC women who are autistic tend to be diagnosed, which is like BPD, OCD, bipolar disorder, and see if those are potentially the elements you might fit under. Because if it's not autism, and that's fine, and they diagnose you with something else and it actually does fit your criteria and needs, then that's something you might want to be open to as well. However, I was very, very lucky to be with a psychologist who is extremely open and really listening to my experiences and being kind during the whole assessment and coming out with the outcome that I was autistic. The surprise was more that she'd also diagnosed me with ADHD, which I'm still trying to come to understanding and accepting if I really do have it.